it's a great chance to tell a story about an Episcopal bishop. I hope got everybody's ear now. This is a story about John, the Episcopal bishop, and my teacher, Rabbi Shlomo Karbach. And he was at an interreligious dialogue in Toronto, and he went, and he got up in front of the whole conference like this, and he told the story of Yosela, the holy miser of Krakow. He says there's a grave in the Krakow cemetery, and I go to frequently back to Eastern Europe, to my town, and there was a gentleman in town just recently. His name is Father Dubois, and most people think most of the Jews of the Holocaust were killed at Auschwitz, at these big concentration camps, but that's not right. They were killed at ravines all over Eastern Europe, and in my town, there were 3,500 Jews that they were taken to a ravine outside the town, and in a half hour, I went back there, and I asked people where the Jews lived, and these people said, well, there were never any Jews there. I said, my family was here for 500 years. And then I went and asked this old man who was driving a horse wagon, because the Ukraine is still like a third world country. And he was driving a horse wagon with hay. That's how my grandmother got out of the Ukraine, hiding under the hay in the horse wagon in 1900. And she walked across. She was only 13. She took 4 younger kids and walked across Poland to Bremen, Germany, and took the steerage ticket to come to Denver. So I'm very grateful to her. I wasn't one of those. We had relatives, though, who were in that group. So I asked this old man, I said, where did the Jews live? And he jumped off of this wagon. He grabbed my arm. He says, I've been waiting 65 years to tell a Jew my story. 65 years I've been waiting. And he dug his fingers into my arm, and he says, I'm so glad God sent you so I could tell you my story. He says, follow me. We walked off into the forests that cover the Ukraine, and he says, here they had the dogs and the machine guns, and here at this ravine, in a half hour they killed everyone but one little boy who was my friend. I was 5 years old, and he was 5 years old, and he ran away into the forest. And I brought him food and water for 30 days. Every day, because all the adults were scared to death, but I wasn't scared because this boy was my friend. And I brought him food and water for 30 days, every day. And then somebody in the village reported on us, and they came and shot him. And I've been waiting 65 years to tell my story to a Jew. So that's what part... Eastern Europe is a very special place to me, and where my family was, and we came from Spain, running from the Inquisition to Poland and Ukraine. So it's a long, long journey. And so basically, the Yosela, Holy Miser of Krakow, was a miser. And the people will come asking for charity. I have people coming all the time, itinerant Jews who come from Israel and Europe, and they come asking for charity. And so every week I have these travelers that come, and I'm very grateful to them because they're not your usual kind of people. So they have many stories. Anyway, they'd come to Yosela. Yosela would listen to their whole story. And they said, get out of here. I can give you a dime. and or a kopeck, and then they would go home. But every Thursday, all of the poor people in Krakow, which is a big city, there have been Jews in Krakow since the Roman times, would get an envelope under their door, and the envelope had some money in it for the Sabbath. And nobody knew who put the money there until Yosela got very deathly ill. And the burial society came to him and said, Yosela, if you want to give us a contribution, we'll bury you. But if you don't give us a contribution, we're going to leave you by the side of the road, which is a big deal. In Judaism, we have to bury within 24 hours. And sure enough, Yosela said, get out of here. You're a bunch of idiots. And they chased him away, and and Yosela died, and they left him by the side of the road. But that Thursday, nobody got their envelope. And they all came to the rabbi. The rabbi put two and two together. He was a smart Jew. And said, Yosela, the holy miser of Krakow. So some people, we talked at the beginning, some people can nullify their ego. We have a special room in the synagogue. It's called the nothing room. And so the rabbi was in there, and I was in there. A bunch of rabbis were in there, and then the janitor came in, and everybody's saying, I'm nothing, I'm nothing. And the chief rabbi looked over at the janitor. He says, look who thinks he's nothing. So Rabbi Karlbach said this story, and John, the Episcopal bishop, came up to him at the end. He says, that was terrific. Can you say the story again? And Rabbi Karlbach said, I don't usually tell the same story twice, It's not good practice. And but the next session, he repeated the story, and then John said, come to my room tonight. He was in tears, and the rabbi said, why are you in tears? He said, well, I got a call from my mother this week, right before this conference, and I've devoted my whole life to the Episcopal Church. He says, but I got a call from my mother, and she said, John, I'm dying, and before I die, I have to tell you that I'm a Jew. Your father was an American soldier. He liberated the concentration camp, and I weighed 60 pounds, and he fed me by hand, and at the end of months of taking care of me, he saved my life. It was like God. And at the end of months, he asked me to marry him. On one condition, he says, the only condition is you never tell anybody you're a Jew. And you have to swear. Take a solemn oath. Never tell anybody you're a Jew. And I said, okay. What was I going to say? I could go to America. I could be married. It was beyond my imagination, so I made the oath. But I couldn't die without telling you that. I'm telling you that I'm a Jew. And then she died. And she said her last words were, we are descendants of Yosela, the holy miser of Krakow. Nobody ever heard of this guy, And if you go to the Krakow cemetery, you can find, there's a grave there that says, Yosela, the holy miser of Krakow. Still today. So he said, I made a vow to God that if somebody came and told me a story about Yosela, the holy miser of Krakow twice, I would go back and be a Jew, even though I've given my whole life to the Episcopal Church. And then you came up, and that's what you said. So he says, I'm going to I'm leaving tonight. I'm going to Israel, and my father will come looking for me. Please don't say a word, and eventually I'll write you. So 10 years later, Rabbi Karlbach, my teacher, got an envelope that said, Yosla, the Holy Chassid of Jerusalem. And in it was a picture of that this man had become, an Orthodox Jew, and had 4 children, and that's so. What is blood? So basically, our law is that if the mother's Jewish, you're Jewish because you always know who the mother is, and often, or at least sometimes, you never know who the father is. So that's a big deal in the Torah. It says women, the feminine. We all have feminine, masculine aspects to us, and we have to constantly marry, because back to the cherubs, we want to keep things complicated, but they're really simple. So hopefully everybody's getting this confusion and cloud. And Rabbi Booth asked me, what's my main hope and goal for the second hour? I said, my goal even when I teach Torah for 5 minutes, is to have Sinai again. My job as a Torah teacher is to bring the light down of revelation, even if it's just 5 minutes. And so reveal part of the essence of Hashem in the world. So what do we know? What do we know? We say that all the time. What do we know? Because we don't know anything. We always are trying to heal. The main purpose of the Seder is to heal the tree of knowledge. Because there's 2 ways of knowing. There's the, Judaism 101 way of knowing, and we can teach you a course, but maybe it's just a story that'll move you, or like that story of that man that moved me, and I'll never forget it. Because what I'm interested in is what your soul is reacting to. You have, so we have 3 triangles of paradox. So Rabbi Booth asked me, well, are you going to talk about that paradox thing you handed out? I thought I was already talking about it, but I'll talk about it some more, that this is a test, right? Abraham's innovation was, as you picked up, what was it?
Oh, walking with the hand of God.
What does that mean to you?
Be co-creators with God, and
Instead of what? Instead of codependent. And some of us, hopefully, what's codependent?
it's beyond me. I'm not powerful. I can't do it.
No, codependent is when you have a good friend or you're a spouse, and they're getting drunk every day, and you call their job and tell them the person's sick. That's codependent. So the Torah is saying lots of people are codependent with God, and we have this amazing word in Hebrew, and I put my name and info up on the board. I have a book of accumulated work of 30 years. I write every week, and you can see a copy of it here. It's a work of progress. I add to it every week. And so there's been a few additions. There's picture of Mount Nebo, what Moses saw when he looked down on the land of Israel from Mount Nebo. Front in the book of Hebrew Dialectic. So it's $30 if anybody's interested in it. That's the pretty cost. We're just interested in getting these revealed ideas in it. And one of the fundamental words is this word "nace," and if hopefully you might have some questions. Hebrew is a pictograph language, like Chinese. So each letter is a picture of something. So this word is a picture of a humble Jew with a bent head. That's the nun, and the samach means support, because in the original tablets of the Ten Commandments, the samach is a circle that was burned all the way through, so it was on both sides, and the middle was that's the first bagel, and that's how we invented the bagel. And the middle is just hanging there, but it doesn't have any visible sign of support. So it's the humble Jew meditating on what it means to be supported by Hashem. So that's the samach. And so there's these 4 meanings, and then we had another question over here from, what's your name? Madi. Medaberet Ivrit. She speaks Hebrew. And say your question. Right. Right. So I teach wilderness trips. So in the wilderness, if you get lost, you put a little flag where you started, because if you go around in a circle, then you know you're in deep trouble. And people die of shame. And shame is a big topic in the Torah. So we're trying to overcome our shame and guilt and depression, which shall keep us stuck. These are the tools of the Satan. And our main goal of all of this is the tshuva journey, which is trying to improve ourselves a little bit. Just a little bit, one step at a time. And that's why I'm here, because I'm just trying to do, obviously, there's a lot of things. Abraham was known for one major attribute. He took small steps. And if God would have said, Abraham, go to the land of Israel, Abraham would have gotten credit for one choice. But God says, go to a land I will show you. Be present. And the only name of God that God called himself in the Torah, we never say. So in Hebrew is the only language in the world where you can't say, I am a man. Because you can't say to be in the present tense. Because if you are, as that great Jewish scholar Ram Dass, or he said his father called him Rum Dum, but Ram Dass said, be here now. We spend every Sabbath trying to be present. Sounds easy. It's not easy to be present. We don't talk about the future or the past on our Sabbath. It's a big deal, what you talk about. And like I say, at the Seder, we are slaves now. Next year, we want to be free. And so we're all on this journey, constantly walking from Goshen to Mount Sinai, and we're hoping to improve a little bit, each day, tiny bit. So we have something we work on in all 50 days. And I think some of that was mirrored in Lent, what you give up for Lent and so forth. And Episcopalians don't eat fish on Friday, right? Oh, yeah, you got to be Catholic to do that, John?
Oh, we can eat fish.
You could eat fish. You don't have to. But thank God, Henry VIII, John? Who started the Episcopal Church? Henry VIII? Yeah. Well, I like history, so here's to Henry VIII. Okay, so NACE is about problem solving, and if you try to start trying to bring the monotheistic religions, you have a piece in here about the 3 monotheistic religions, and I'll just read what is the front line today. It is the same one Abraham revealed in his tent 3,000 years ago at the Tower of Babel. Everyone at the time was terrified after the flood. The sky is falling. They built the tower to hold up the sky. We're still trying to hold up the sky, global warming and all that, God hates us. We must fight against him. Avram said, friends, sit down, make a zimun, have a good conversation, take war, lechem out of the earth, and feel love, beauty, and life. Hashem is pouring into the world at all times. Don't gossip and scapegoat the stranger with all your shame and darkness. So the main thing of the sheep people is sheep teach you compassion. Moses heard God at the burning bush because he saved a wayward sheep. It's such a simple story, but he saved a wayward sheep. And as we say in the piece that we wrote, that sheep, Abel was a shepherd, Cain was a farmer. And shepherds have time to think. So from time immemorial, the ideal was for a Jew to have a job where he had time to pray, study, and think. And anytime someone calls, my wife says, where's the rabbi? They say, where's the rabbi? They say, she's trained to say, he's thinking. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm trying to think. But these are techniques of problem solving. So NACE, so miracle is a big deal. It's a big deal because it's a big word in Christianity. And I knew people who took the course in miracles. Has anybody done that? Yeah. Anyway, it's very high. It's associated with comfort. We have to pray for miracles because we have to pray. What are we going to pray for? We give a lot of thought to the question is, we ask ourselves every time, every day, we pray 3 times a day. And every morning I get up at 6 o'clock and say good morning to the Creator. First thing, that's the big deal. First thing is say good morning to the Creator, and then say, I have to ask for what I need rather than what I want. Because sometimes our wants ferment, and we can consume our ways off the planet, like a bunch of locusts. So we have to distinguish between what we need and what we want. And that's why every holiday we attack a habit. The biggest tyranny, the biggest tyrant is our habits. And so every holiday we attack a habit. So anybody know which one we're attacking on Passover? Pride? You're right, but that's already philosophical. It has to be more down to earth. We don't eat bread for a week. It's a big deal. Every processed food has bread products in it. I only eat simple foods on Passover. Some Jews have invented all kinds of substitutes with potato starch and stuff like that. But that's getting around the rules, which we like to do anyway. But we don't eat any bread or bread products, and that's a big deal. We only eat simple foods, meats and vegetables and fruits that are natural. That's why the best kosher food over there was the grapes, because God makes good stuff. And so I could eat the grapes. Our next holiday, we don't sleep all night. On the Sabbath, we don't carry money because we figure Abraham's lesson is if you could break one little habit, it'll give you strength and power with the real addictions, right? Whatever they are, with food or alcohol or what substances or painkillers. What is 90% of Americans on some kind of painkiller, whatever. Vicodin, OxyContin. So habits are a bigger tyrant than the Pharaoh. So every holiday, and then in the fall, we go out of our house and we live in a shack with no roof for a whole week. We live in there just to break the habit of having four walls around us. And it's great, it's very empowering, and it's a great idea, great concept. But it's part of this idea of tests that Abraham's innovation was breaking his life into 10 tests. What he talked with Noah about is Noah said, I prayed for miracles, but then I got drunk. Because I was codependent, I walked with God, and when God quit talking to me, I was in big trouble. And the part that you didn't learn in Sunday school, it's actually in the Hebrew text, but they never translated, because every translation is a commentary, right? And believe me, 99.9% of the translations are very poor, I know it sounds biased, and I am, but anyway, Noah was sodomized and castrated by his son, Ham, which means Mr. Heat. They never translate the names. You miss half the Bible if you don't translate the names. Mr. Ham means Mr. Heat. And so Noah had 3 sons, Ham, Shem, and Japhet, beauty, heat, and essence. And the question was, will beauty dwell in the tent of heat, or will beauty dwell in the tent of essence? And we're still debating that all the time. So there's sympathy, empathy, and telepathy. And we work to be Yud K Vav K. That's the name. That's where all these fours come from. 4 worlds of consciousness. God's name means to be. I am that I am, I will be what I will be. And in Hebrew, again, you cannot say to be in the present tense. It's the only language in the world. And it's just amazing. That name of God is on a paper or in a book, then we bury it. We do not throw it away. We have total respect for this ineffable name, and that's the only name God called himself. All the other names for God are anthropomorphic projections from human beings. So this is what we acknowledge, and this is all part of not knowing. So we say that when you're present and you know intuitively, it's called the feminine side of the brain, which in Hebrew is bina. And we have a general concept in brain studies of right and left brain, right? So as Martin Buber wrote, I hope some of you read it, I and Thou, he says, I can know everything about that tree or a human being. I can know every single part, but I don't know them. I can know everything about bicycles and riding bicycles, but I don't know how to ride a bike. So there's intimate knowing, because it says Adam knew his wife Eve. So there's an intimate knowing, and there's a knowing like we call the Greek knowing, which is Bible 201. And course study, and you don't know the Bible at all. So what we try to do is walk into the story like we just did and be present in the story with the people and actually have telepathy with people who lived thousands of years ago and be there present with them. And that's called tele, which is a way of becoming creative with the stories by being in the stories and not just studying the stories. So that's how we're doing. We had some good questions, and the final step of NACE. So NACE is a high level of test. Abraham said, the tshuva journey. That means the journey of improving oneself little by little. You organize you have to define where God is testing you. This is obviously a perception. Everybody lives in their own universe of perception. In Hebrew, there's 10 words for perception. In Eskimo, there's 10 words for snow. And in English, we have millions of words for scientific objects. So when Hebrew, when they were writing the Hebrew dictionary, they had to have a word for television. They made televisia, right? All these scientific words are English. But in Hebrew, there's 10 words for perception and understanding different ways. So we have this idea of the masculine side of the brain, which is more logical, mathematical, scientific, cause and effect, and the intuitive feminine side of the brain, which is the way we grasp this deeper type of knowing. And we're always trying to get married of the masculine and feminine in each person. So I'm working on that even as I sit here. That we have to join those two parts, like the cherubs. And so the final meaning, this is a very nice question. The final meaning of nace is not test. The final meaning is banner, because you gotta know if you're going to improve, you gotta know when you're repeating yourself. And if you don't know when you're repeating, you can't improve, because it's all unconscious. So that's the final meaning. We got to place a flag. What's to know when you have your book? Yeah. You have your book? Yeah, we have to know. So we drew a picture of the tshuva journey, which is a spiral. Each time you come around to the same place, you go a little higher. So I made a spiral of light in the desert, which is the Anasazi symbol for journey, and we're all on these tshuva journeys. We're just trying to improve things one little dialogue at a time. I hope we improve things a little bit today, a little bit deeper understanding. What you're looking at, you'll read the pieces. If you want the book, you could contact me. This is hopefully one of those little steps that'll make things better. Yes? Absolutely. Absolutely. Miracles are great. We're grateful. Just using your eyeball is probably the biggest miracle in the universe. You have more cells in your eyeball than there are stars in the heavens. And absolutely, but test is so much higher. And banner is even deeper. So we're working from our lizard brain all the way 4 levels up to the frontal lobes. There's 4 levels of brain we're working on, and it's all part of the Torah. Any other questions we'll entertain? Hopefully we provoked some thought in you, and thank you very much for being such a great group. And I always judge by what I learn, so I really appreciate your interactions and your presence here. And hopefully we got beyond Bible 101. Yeah.